Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a huge pile of source material here, articles, some research, even confidential notes, all clustered around October 2025. And honestly, the one word that keeps jumping out is volatility. Just sheer global volatility. Geopolitics, finance, conflict zones, everything feels like it's running red hot.
Yeah,
So our job today is to try and cut through that noise, pull out the really critical takeaways for you.
absolutely. And what's really striking, looking through all this, is this strange paradox playing out.
Yeah.
On one hand, you've got the big powers, the U.S., China, trying desperately to tighten their grip on things like supply chains, tech.
Mm,
But at the same time, almost everywhere else, systems seem to be fragmenting, breaking down, decentralizing. It creates
no.
this risk that's incredibly hard to even track. Control is what everyone wants, but chaos seems to be what we're getting.
Okay, let's start right there then, with that fight for control. The economic battlefield. The sources are calling the U.S.-China dynamic a balance of economic terror. Sounds intense. It seems focused on minerals, semiconductors. China just made a big move, didn't they?
Oh yeah, a really aggressive one. Beijing rolled out new export controls. They're demanding licenses now for exporting high-performance batteries, the stuff that goes in them. And, crucially, any product that contains even a tiny trace. We're talking over 0.1% of Chinese rare earths.
Wow, 0.1%.
Hmm.
Given China's dominance in rare earths, that's a potential chokehold on so much global manufacturing, especially green tech.
Exactly. It's designed to give them leverage. But the really, let's say, clever part is the bureaucracy they've wrapped around it.
Right, I saw that detail. The applications for these licenses, they have to be in Chinese. And they're only issued in some specific format, Kingsoft.
Yeah, Kingsoft,
Yeah.
which is basically China's own kind of word processing software, not standard PDFs or anything easy.
Mhm.
So you'd see what they're doing. It's bureaucracy as a weapon. It creates these instant massive headaches for foreign companies. It slows everything down, maybe even stops exports without technically being a full ban. It's a subtle control.
That is, passive aggression on a global scale. Okay, so how did the U.S. respond? Just as tough, I imagine.
Pretty much. President Trump fired back, threatening those blanket 100% tariffs on all Chinese goods, and maybe even more damaging long-term, threatening export controls on critical software. Specifically, EDA chip design tools.
EDA tools. Okay, just quickly for listeners, what exactly are those and why hit them?
Right. EDA is electronic design automation. It's the absolutely essential software engineers need to design advanced computer chips, like the blueprints. And here's the key. U.S. firms and allies. They control something like 82% of the EDA software market inside China. So cutting off access, that's like slamming the brakes on China's own ambitions to become self-sufficient in high-end chips. It hits hard.
Okay, got it. And this isn't just a U.S.-China spat anymore, is it? Europe's getting dragged in. We saw that Dutch move against Nexperia.
Yeah, that was significant. The Dutch government effectively taking control of Nexperia, which is a semiconductor firm owned by China's Wingtech. They cited national security. It really shows how this economic fight is spilling over, forcing countries that maybe wanted to stay neutral to pick a side. European economic security is now directly in the crosshairs.
Right. So the economic war is silicon and rare earths. What about actual physical confrontation? The sources talk a lot about the Arctic.
They do, and they make an interesting point. President Trump seems, well, still quite focused on the idea of buying Greenland. But the analysis suggests that's kind of missing the point of the immediate threat.
Which is where?
It's operational. It's the Pacific flank up near Alaska, the Bering Strait area. We're seeing Russian and Chinese long-range bombers, warships, operating there much more frequently, often together, coordinated. The real challenge isn't getting more frozen land. It's defending the vital sea and air lanes right near U.S. territory.
Okay, so that explains the push to reopen that old military base, ADAC.
Exactly. ADAC is perfectly positioned there near the Great Circle shipping routes. It's about having eyes on and the ability to respond to these joint naval and air patrols happening right on the doorstep. That's where the real friction is building.
Okay, so moving from that great power tension, let's look at active conflicts. One theme that really jumps out is how transactional U.S. foreign policy seems to have become. It's not just quid pro quo anymore. The reports detail support being tied, like explicitly and publicly, to domestic political results in other countries.
It's quite stark. Take Argentina. President Milei meets with Trump. Argentina's economy is in free fall. They desperately need support. Trump's condition, according to these notes, was incredibly direct. It was about Milei's party in their midterm elections on October 26th. The quote was apparently, if he loses, we are not going to be generous with Argentina.
Wow, that's blunt, tying American aid directly to another country's election outcome like a performance bond.
Precisely. And meanwhile, things are heating up with Venezuela, too. The administration greenlit covert CIA operations against Maduro. The language used is narco-terrorist.
And there's a military buildup.
A significant one in the Caribbean. Destroyers, F-35s operating nearby. And there's been an uptick in interdictions at sea, including attacks on small boats allegedly carrying drugs. Tragically, reports say at least 27 people have been killed in those recent operations. Maduro's response is interesting. He's appearing in public surrounded by civilians, basically playing the human shield card, while also appealing to the UN Security Council, claiming he fears an imminent attack.
Heavy stuff. Then there's Gaza. We saw President Trump announce peace in the Middle East at this summit, but neither Israel nor Hamas were actually there. How does that square with the reality on the ground?
It doesn't, really. The sources paint a completely different picture, a really grim one. The moment the ceasefire took hold, the violence didn't stop. It just changed shape. It fragmented. Hamas immediately deployed thousands of its fighters onto the streets, not just patrolling, but reportedly executing alleged collaborators, clashing with other Palestinian factions, armed gangs. The fight isn't against an external enemy anymore. It's become an internal battle for control. Who rebuilds? Who rules? Hamas, rival clans, international forces. Authority just shattered.
That idea of fragmentation, it connects to something else surprising in the reports: Ukraine. Specifically, how some of their elite military units, Azov, Third Assault, Kartia, are mentioned, seem to be operating almost like, well, like corporations.
It's a fascinating and maybe slightly unsettling evolution in warfare. These units are run with professional managers. They have dedicated HR departments. And most startlingly, they're using business metrics, key performance indicators, KPIs, things like price per kill and cost per frontline day.
Price per kill as a KPI. That's
Yeah.
chillingly efficient.
It is. They're applying business optimization principles to combat effectiveness. And their recruitment.
Ugh.
It's just as modern.
How so?
Super aggressive digital marketing, aimed squarely at 18 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
YouTube channels, slick videos, collaborations with music stars, even sports figures. They run things like a specialized drone school called Kill House, and their ad campaigns shift constantly. Sometimes it's all machismo, sometimes it's jokey, and lately there's been a shift towards emphasizing survival. The tagline, "We're here to live." It's sophisticated marketing for military recruitment.
Okay, so you've got these incredibly expensive conflicts, this U.S.-China standoff.
Yeah.
It all costs a fortune. Does this feed directly into the debt issues we're seeing globally?
Absolutely. It's a huge driver. Let's pivot back to the macro picture for a second, because beneath all the geopolitical drama, the financial system looks strained. Public debt in rich countries is nearing, 110% of GDP on average, and deficits are huge. The U.S. deficit is running at 6% of GDP. That's just not sustainable long term.
So if spending cuts or tax hikes are politically toxic, what's the out? How do governments deal with this mountain of debt?
Well, the prediction in these reports is, unfortunately, a return to an old playbook: inflation and something called financial repression. It's basically how they dealt with the massive debts after World War II.
Financial repression. What does that mean in practice?
It means governments deliberately keep interest rates below the actual rate of inflation. So the debt gets eroded away in real terms. They pay you back with money that's worth less. It's a way to default slowly without actually defaulting. It penalizes savers, helps debtors, namely the government.
Okay. And we saw a potential warning sign of financial stress recently, didn't we? That First Brands collapse. It wasn't a bank, but it sent ripples.
Yeah, that was a major red flag. First Brands makes auto parts, but its collapse wasn't about spark plugs. It exposed just how much leverage, how much risky borrowing had built up in the non-bank financial world. Hedge funds, private equity, investment banks, and particularly these complex structures called CFOs, collateralized fund obligations.
CFOs, can you break those down simply?
Think of them like complex bundles of debt, often tied to private equity or hedge fund investments. They operate outside the really tight regulation that banks face now. The First Brands failure showed that investors were maybe getting too comfortable, too eager to lend into these complicated, opaque structures. It suggests the system might be overheating again, and that risk is hiding in corners where regulators maybe can't see it as clearly. It's fragmented, hard to track.
Right. That theme again. Okay, let's wrap up with maybe two final, quite different examples of adaptation or reaction to all these pressures, starting with California. Big policy shift there.
Yeah, really significant win for the YMBA Kind in My Backyard movement. Governor Newsom signed this bill, SB 79. It's a direct response to California losing population. They're worried about losing political clout, maybe 3 congressional seats. So this law basically forces rezoning around public transit stops, allows much taller residential buildings, and it slaps big fines on cities that try to block new housing. It's an aggressive attempt to tackle their housing crisis head-on, driven by this fear of losing political power.
Fascinating. A present-day policy driven by demographics and power. Now, for the last one, let's jump way back. Ancient history. Something about lead poisoning and human evolution.
It's pretty wild research, yeah. Scientists looked at ancient teeth from long before industrial pollution, and they found surprisingly high levels of lead. It suggests humans have been exposed to this toxin, maybe from natural sources or early metallurgy, for a very long time, millennia. But here's the intriguing part. They think a modern version of a specific gene, no VA1, might have evolved partly in response to this. This version of the gene might give humans some tolerance to lead. Specifically, it might have stopped lead interfering with the development or function related to speech.
So, tolerance to lead might have helped Homo sapiens develop or maintain complex language. That's a mind-bending idea.
It is a potential link between adapting to an environmental poison and one of our defining cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
A real reminder of how deeply environment shapes evolution.
Okay, so this whole deep dive, it really paints a picture of a world on high alert, defined by risk that's spread out, decentralized. You've got China using bureaucratic knots as weapons. You've got military units run like startups, foreign policy turning into transactional demands. It's messy.
It really is, which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. In a world where everything, finance, conflict, even influence, seems to be fragmenting, becoming more decentralized, what's the most critical piece of centralized intelligence or control we actually need? Is it the ability to track money flowing through those shadow financial entities? Is it intelligence to really understand and counter privatized warfare, or maybe the decentralized drug trade funding some of these conflicts? Where should that central focus be to manage the next big shock? Something to think about.